Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to the Sim Hanger. My name's Mark. A couple of weeks ago I released this video covering my 10 favorite payware airports. I got quite a number of comments on that video asking me to do something similar but for freeware. So in this video, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at 10 of my favorite freeware airports, but with a caveat. There won't be any regional or international airports included. That's a different category in my book. So we're only going to be looking at the smaller local airports, but of course, any list from me wouldn't be complete without a few bush strips thrown in as well. The number of airports and scenery files available as freeware for Microsoft Flight Simulator is, in a word, immense. Have I looked at all of it? Certainly I haven't. So if you think I'm missing something and I should take a look at a particular airport, then please drop me a comment and a link in the notes below. My selection today has excluded a number of airports based on a number of parameters, and they are if the airport comes as part of a multi-pack, maybe 3, 5 or even 10 airports, for example, bush flying in Idaho. Well, I've excluded those simply because it's beyond the scope of me being able to cover them in this video. I've also excluded airports where they require multiple different downloads of various third-party scenery assets. Again, I've tried to keep the download and the links fairly straightforward and simple, as well as the installation. Obviously, I'll leave links to all these airports in the notes below. But for now, let's get started. I suppose the best place to start is to explain what makes a particular airport a favorite and others not. Well, there's a number of different factors. The authenticity of the airport and quality of the scenery is obviously important, but it's more than that. Maybe it's a location with access to other airports or points of interest, maybe difficult or interesting approaches or landings, something different perhaps, and maybe even the ambience or how that airport feels. Attached to the mainland by a small spur is a tiny island just offshore downtown Chicago. Today it's a park, but it wasn't always this way. There used to be an airport there, and it's the perfect place to start. Merrill C. Meigs, to give it its correct name, is now closed. But Z Design Studios have done a great job on bringing this historic airport back to life. For users of the earlier versions of Microsoft Flight Simulator, well, this was our starting off point, of course, and where many of our flight simulation adventures began, with scenic approaches from either end of the runway. And it's long enough to accommodate most GA aircraft as well as my DC-6 and of course business jets. There is a pro version available from the developer, but this is the free version that we're seeing. The principal difference being the enhancement of the various buildings and the details therein. The developer has paid a lot of attention to detail at this airport, and that includes the rather extensive marina behind the airport. And of course its location is ideal for either short or longer hops into Canada or around the States. So its Meigs Field occupies my number 10 favorite position, the home arguably of flight simulation, and an airport in the real world with both an interesting and very turbulent past. Coming in at number 9 is a privately owned airstrip, LOCH, and we're located in the Alps not far from Bolzano in Italy. And if you like tricky or difficult approaches, this is for you. In fact, this one goes in my crazy list. You're landing in the base of the valley and on an incline, but here's the kicker. You can't come in low because of the electrical cables spanning the valley. We've just passed the first one and we're continuing our descent. And here comes number 2. And now you need to drop like a rock. In the real world, the owner has a Pilatus PC-12 and lands here, thus my choice of the TBM today. Oh, and did I mention that the runway's really short as well? Well, I just made that one. And landing isn't the only challenge at this airport. Parking represents its own issues as well. There's a very narrow strip as you descend to the apron. And once again, this scenery is not restricted just to the airport. There's a logging operation just a little bit further up the valley as well as some other buildings and points of interest. In the real world, you've got to get special permission to land here. The developer's done an absolutely great job in reproducing this airport in a beautiful part of the world. If you're looking for entertainment and a challenge, well, Strawberry Ridge could be the airstrip for you. And it's been given the code STR in Microsoft Flight Simulator for quick reference. And this is another airport from my crazy list. It has a 1,000-foot runway. And I use the term runway in the loosest possible sense. It's a grass strip. But more than that, it has a varying gradient from 16 to 4%. You need to be fairly well versed in your stall capabilities to land and take off here. And we're in bush flying country. We're in the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina. And we're not far from the mountain range's highest peak. Whilst not an exact replica of the runway in the real world, the developer's done a great job, and certainly captured the atmosphere and excitement of landing at an airport such as this. You can only take off heading downhill, and you can only land heading uphill. You need to maintain a little bit of altitude to clear the trees, so you need the incline to slow you down. There's a small parking area and small workshop just to the left of the main house at the top of the ridge. To the developer, thank you for giving me quite a few hours of fun and enjoyment. Wellesbourne in the UK earns the number 7 slot. One of the distinguishing features of this airport is it does have a Vulcan in situ, although it no longer flies. It used to taxi up and down the runway, but I'm not sure if that's still the case. Wellesbourne Mountford Airport is situated close to both Coventry and Birmingham. This airport has earned its place in my hangar simply by the amazing amount of detail included. For the developer, this was clearly a labour of love. There are quite a few payware airports out there that are just not as good. In the real world, this is a fairly busy little airport, but servicing GA predominantly. Like most smaller airports in the UK, it owes its origin to the Second World War and the RAF, but is now privately owned by the original family that owned the land. It's a great destination, more or less centrally placed. No matter where you look at this airport and the outer reaches as well, you'll be amazed by the little details that have been included. Wellesbourne, a great destination for your next VFR flight. We've now jumped across to New Zealand, to Lake Tekapo Airport, and we're just a few miles from the lake itself. And this airport is one of those airports where you need to go and explore, because the developer has paid minute attention to detail. This airport truly feels alive, and the 3D bespoke rendered items that you can find at this airport have been very well done indeed. There's weathering on the buildings and reflection on the glass. And whilst I've never been there, I've got no doubt in my mind this is exactly what this airport looks like. Built in 1974, this is a non-certified airport and is used mainly for safaris. And when you see its location, you can understand clearly why, as it's only a very short hop to the Southern Island Alps. And Milford Sound Airport, well, it's not far away at all. If you're planning on touring the southern island of New Zealand, the land of the hobbits, well, Lake Takapo is the perfect place to start. And of course, the added bonus is the surrounding scenery is absolutely stunning in this part of the world. Milford Sound, here I come. Welcome to Cheat Island Airstrip, which has been given the fictitious code PZ52. We're in West Virginia in the States, and this is a popular location for fishing, exploring and for camping. Not only has this been faithfully reproduced, but the approach is an interesting and challenging one, and especially so if you turn up the weather, as there's no direct clear-in approach. The standard approach is fly along the river and then a bank to the left to catch the runway, and that's a grass strip and it's only 1700 feet long. Go-rounds here of course are possible, but it is surrounded by some fairly high ground, so caution is required. And you can have some great fun bringing in a Cessna Caravan or similar. I did try it with a business jet, but well, that didn't end very well. The developer has provided us with a great and challenging airport in a lovely part of the world, which is just made for those challenging VFR flights. This airport typifies what I'm looking for in scenery: great attention to detail, enhancement to the surrounding area, and in a scenic area to boot. Due to Vilshofen's proximity to the Danube and some fairly hilly terrain, the approach can be quite challenging, particularly if visibility is reduced. Very little that you see here is default scenery, including the bridges and the church on the right-hand side. The marina we've just flown over has been beautifully recreated. Just to the right of the main runway is a water runway for your seaplane, and many of the buildings on the other side of the river have been handcrafted, and it all adds up just to improve and create great immersion for your flight. And its runway is of a length that it can accommodate a wide variety of different aircraft. The scenery includes the interior of the tower having been modelled, an animated lighthouse, modified night lighting, and it's perfectly situated for a hop to Bavaria or perhaps into the Alps. The scenery deservedly has a place in my scenery hangar. Okay, so we're moving into the top three, and this is Quattam River. Charlie Quebec Romeo Alpha, which is a fictitious ICAO code just for Microsoft Flight Simulator. We're in the heart of the backcountry in British Columbia, Canada, which is without doubt, I think, my favourite place for bush flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Quattam River Airport is just a small dirt strip. Not sure, but I think it's about 800 feet long, surrounded by mountains in what is really beautiful country. And the developer's done a fantastic job in bringing this airport to life. Oh, and watch the bears on the approach and the fence too. There's even some cones at the beginning of the runway so you can practice your stall takeoff and landings. Not my best landing, but it'll do. I think the best way to describe this airport would be atmospheric. Chuck in a little bit of rain and snow and, well, you've got it all. In addition, one of the beauties of this airstrip is there are other airstrips similar to this scattered around, all within a 15 to 20 minute flight. Today I've brought the Husky in, but I often come in a Cessna Caravan as well. If you want a recommendation from me, well, spice up your flying career with a landing at Quattam River. Quattam River, of course, made famous by Prop Strike Studios in X-Plane, and the developer here, he's done an excellent job in bringing it back to life. Duxford Echo Golf Sierra Uniform is an Imperial War Museum for aviation in the UK. I've personally been there many times, and I must say the developer has produced something that's true and authentic. Or to put it another way perhaps, this is payware quality. Duxford features the history of British aviation from the Concorde to the earliest aircraft, and has one of the finest collection of American warbirds and a few bombers as well. The attention to detail here once again is absolutely stunning, but from the same developer comes a little add-on, which is an optional extra when you download the scenery. Duxford is well known for its air shows, and not particularly the World War II fighters. And there's a few flying Spitfires based here at Duxford, but this add-on, well, it gives you a crowd. So you no longer have to do your fancy displays to an empty airport. Your adoring fans can marvel at your acrobatic display. And once again, the detail and variety in the characters of the crowd, well, it's exceptional. The number of historic aircraft scattered about the airport, well, it's impressive, and once again, clearly a labour of love by the developer. As things stand today, well, Duxford's got a permanent place in my scenery library, and I recommend you take a look. You won't be disappointed. This airport was opened by the Canadian Fisheries Department to do research. I believe that this airport is no longer active, but I'm not sure of that, and if anybody knows, please let me know in the comments below. We're back in Canada and we're in British Columbia, and only about a half-hour, 40-minute flight from Quatam River. We've headed further north. It's Macmel Fisheries Airstrip, and it's my favourite location and my favourite add-on airport at this time. It has all the elements I'm looking for. It's rustic. It's a difficult landing, particularly in the larger aircraft, with a runway with trees fairly close on either side. But as I'm in the Top Rudder 103 Solo, well, I won't be landing on the runway today. I'm going to land directly in the parking area. From a location point of view, well, it's difficult to imagine anything better than this. Lots of water around and plenty of very high mountains. If there's a spot of bush flying in your blood, well, Macmel Fisheries should be in your scenery folder. This particular airport, well, it's been very well modelled. And once again, thanks to all the developers that have contributed to making Microsoft Flight Simulator such an inspiring sim. Don't forget to comment below if you think there's an airport that should be in my scenery folder. Thank you very much for joining me. Hope you found this useful and informative. See you soon. Take care and bye-bye for now.